Hello and welcome. Thanks for popping into my channel. If you are new here, please like and subscribe for me. If you find this content helpful, smash that notification bell so that you don't miss out on the next video. Comment below with anything that you need help with or topics you'd like me to cover, and check out my website, consultingninja.tech. With that out of the way, buckle up and hold on. This has been requested multiple times. We are doing authentication, and we are doing the full stack authentication. This is going to require database, Node.js Express API backend, and we are going to use a Svelte front end. If you are unfamiliar with any of those pieces, prior to this video, I have done a beginner basic setup for each of those pieces. So if you've not watched those videos and you don't know how to set up a Mongo instance, then go ahead and watch that video. If you don't know how to do the basic setup for an Express Node.js backend API, watch that video. I'll put links in the description of this video to all of those. And then we also are going to be using the skeleton login app that I created for a front end, and then we're going to modify that for this project as well. So if you need any of those videos, go ahead and pause this one, go watch those first, and then come back. Otherwise, let's get right into it. I've already fired up my Mongo database. It's running in a Docker container. I can see it here by doing a Docker PS, and there my Mongo database is running. Alright, so let's get right into it then. We can clear this out, and let's go ahead and install all of the packages that we're going to need to do this. So we need bcrypt to hash the passwords, npm install bcrypt. We don't want to store the passwords as plain strings, so we're going to hash them first. And then let's npm install .env. I'm going to show you guys how to use environment variables in coordination with the JSON Web Token to make this more secure. And then we're going to need the JSON Web Token, npm install JSON Web Token. Make sure that it's 9.0.0. There is a security flaw. If you use that package, go back and update it anywhere you're using it, because it allows remote code execution and you don't want that. And then npm install MongoDB. With all of those things installed, now we'll have all of the packages, the additional packages that we need. The next thing that we need to do is set up a database connection file for connecting to our database. So do a new file right here and call this database connection. I like to call it database connection.js. You can call it whatever you'd like. Totally up to you. This is something that I prefer. And we're going to be doing an const Mongo client, and that's going to require MongoDB, like that. And then let's make an anonymous function called fire connection. We want to fire off a database connection, and then we're going to check to make sure that it was in fact connected. So the first thing we need is the const URL. I'm running this in a Docker container, and I have it set up as if it's running locally. If you want to use the cloud version, watch the video again. That will walk you through how to set that up. 27017. I prefer the Docker version, and if you want to know why, again, you can check that video out. Const, and then we need a new client, new Mongo client, and then we pass that URL in there. And then let's set up our database name, and we can just call this all users, like that, and a collection name. Oops. Let's call the collection all users, and let's call the database users, like that. And then const db, and here's where we're actually firing up the database. One of the things that's nice about this command is that if the database does not exist, then this command will create it first and then select it. So it's a 2-for-1. And then the collection, and that is client.collection. And the same thing, we're going to pass in the collection name, like that. And then let's just go ahead and do a quick check before we bail out. Let's do a if database and collection. Then let's do a console DB and collection good to go, like that. And then we just need to return an object, and we're going to have database equal to database and collection equal to collection, just like that. And make sure you have your spelling correct there. Now we just need to do a module.exports and equal object, and we'll just ... fire connection off, just like that. Now everywhere that we need to use that, we will have that available in our routes. We're going to go add some of those, but first, inside of app.js, we need to make some changes in here as well. Now I'm using the one that we previously started, but we do need to make some modifications to really get this where it needs to be. So first of all, we're going to add some additional routes here. So we're going to leave login. Let's get rid of index, or repurpose it and call this register. We're going to have a register route. So I'm going to show you guys how to register a user as well. Let's do these in order. So register, login. This is going to be, we'll just call this, let's just call this user router. This is going to be the route that authenticates our user using that token. And that'll be user, like that. And then we're also going to need a logout route for logging a user out. That will be routes / logout. Okay, so we have a register, a login, an authenticate that we just calling user, and a logout. Now the next thing that we need to modify is this will deal with CORS for standard things, but as I've pointed out in other videos, when you come across the CORS issue, you just look at what the browser is telling you is missing and then just come add that here. So we're going to be sending credentials back and forth through cookies. So what we need to do is a response.header, and when the browser is doing that options pre-flight request, we need to tell it that allowing credentials is okay. And it's control, not controls. Access control, allow credentials, like that, and then we'll say true. I like to give a space after those. And then the next thing that we need to do is we need to add here in the allowed headers, we need to add from the other side credentials. So we're saying credentials is okay to let them go back and forth, and then from the front end we're going to allow front ends to also send the credentials headers to us. So there's two pieces to that. And then one last one, response.header access control allow methods, and we are going to say get post, just like that. Let's do a response.status 200 so that the pre-flight request knows that everything is okay. Here's everything that you can do, and everything is also okay. And then this next just lets it move along. Go ahead and give that a save, and then here we'll need to add just a few things, and all we're going to do is add these routes in there. So essentially all we need to do is just copy this one, And you can get rid of the index router. To make things standard, like it would normally be, let's add a /API to these. Because that is what you would find in the real world. Let's also do it that way. So /API/login/API/ well, let's keep things consistent. Let's do register, and this will be register router, like that for that one, and then login, and then user. This will be the user router, and then logout, and this will be the logout. And then just double check all those, that they all of those match up, that they're all spelled correctly. Register, login, user, logout. Register, login, user, logout. And then make sure, confirm those here. Register, login, user, logout, and the routers as well. Give that a save, and then that's the last thing that we need to modify in app.js in order to have all of our routes. Now we just need to create those routes. So let's start by creating the register route. So create new file and register.js. We can copy to get us started from the login. So let's go ahead and do that. Copy and paste. We will need to import some more things. So we need to import var. This is where we're going to use that bcrypt, because when we register, that's when we're going to hash that password. There we go. And then we're also going to need to pull in that database connection file. So it's nice that we have that done, so we can use that in every file that we need it. And that is require database connection, like that. Now, the first thing that we need to do, let's write a function, and this function is going to connect to our Mongo database. So const register user, it's an async function. Most of the stuff that we're doing now is async, so make sure that this is an async function. Make sure that this is an async function. This is going to take a collection and a user, and it is going to register, and that is await collection dot insert one, and pass that user in. We're going to be getting that from our route, from our post route, and passing it up into this helper function. And this is the one that's going to actually reach out to our database and insert that user. And then const index await collection dot create index, and this is saying that we want the username to be a unique field. So that's important. So username, comma, or colon, sorry, 1, and then another little object, unique, true, like that, and then return register. And I guess technically, since we're not doing anything with this, we could get rid of the variable. Let's just leave it in case you want to do something with it. Make sure that that part was successful or something. All right. So this will be a post request. We're not doing any nesting. So inside of here, the very first thing that we need to do is let's check to make sure. We're going to do a check in the front, but let's do a check in the back as well to make sure that request.body.username is in fact there. If it's not, then let's do a response.status 500.json. Now I'm going to be using a standard object for all of my responses. I would encourage you to do the same. I've seen some tutorials where they would have one route returning some simple text, another route returning complicated objects. In order to keep things consistent for yourself and for others, have a standard response. Now, I'm going to use an object, and it's going to contain a few things. Success, and that is a Boolean. So error, that's a Boolean. And then a message, and that's some text, missing username. And then data, and you can just pass the request.body back for debugging purposes for the front end. That's helpful for front end developers as well to have that. And then if we don't have the username, then we want to return. We want to bail out. We don't want to do anything else. We'll send the error message. We'll send the status 500 so that the front end knows it's a failure, and then give them this additional information. The next thing let's do, and I'm doing this part on purpose. I am purposely keeping these separate. You could have one check, but I'm checking for password here. And I want to do that because I want different messaging depending on which one was missing. You could combine these and then do a ternary in one, but this is going to be a little bit more clear as to what's going on. So if the request.body.password is not there, we're going to do the same thing, response, and then let's just copy that. But what we're going to say is missing password. Like that. So now we know for sure that we have the username and password if we're getting to this point. Ooh, let's make sure that we don't miss our return. Definitely want to bail out and don't attempt any of this other stuff if that information is missing. So const salt, and this is where we're going to encrypt the password. This is going to a promise, so we need to await it. bcrypt.generate salt, and it's going to take 10 rounds to do that, so put 10 in there. And then const hashed password, and we're going to equal await bcrypt.hash. And what we want to do is pass in request.body.password and then the salt that we just generated. Like that. So let's create a new user. Const new user is assigned an object, and it's going to be first name request.body.first name, last name request.body.last name, username. Now I'm doing username. You certainly could do something else. Username is going to be my unique field. You could use email if you'd like. I'm not putting the email in here just for simplicity's sake, but you certainly could skip the username and do email instead. I feel like a lot of websites let you do either or. They let you do either a username or an email. So I'm just going to do username because it's just going to be a string of characters anyway. So they certainly could put an email in here. Password, and this is going to be the hashed password. We don't want to store the password that was passed directly in because it would just be plain text, and if something were to happen, that password would be completely exposed. This way, it's at least going to be stored in the database as a hash. Security, 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 right? Okay, so now let's do a try, and what we want to try is const new register equals await, and let's fire up that function, and what we're going to pass it is the database connection dot collection and the new user object that we just created. Sweet. Then let's do a response.json sending a success equals true, error false, message successful registration. Data is going to be what is passed back from the database registration function, which should be the time it was created and one other piece of data. I can't remember what. We'll see it in a minute. And then let's catch any errors. And what we're going to do is, let's go ahead and copy this. So we're going to send 500 is a server error, by the way. And what we're going to send is success, false, error, true. That's correct. And then we're going to say error with database register. And then we'll pass the body right back to it. And then we do need to get rid of this one that we had previously, or we'll get an error that that we had already sent headers, because we're definitely going to have sent something. Save that file. Now I'm going to be using Postman. If you don't know what Postman is, it's just this application. It's totally free to use that lets you ping your backend, your API, with all different kinds of requests and data, and you can see what comes back. It's super helpful because it allows us to find out if our backend is working without having to create an entire front end. It's a really useful application. I'll leave a link in the description. Let's fire up this backend, see if we have any problems here. And we do. I did a client. This is supposed to be a database. So give that a save. Now let's go ahead and try again. Yeah, I probably should not have put all these in there right away. Let's go ahead and comment out the ones that we don't have. So just do a toggle line comment on those, and then we'll uncomment them as we create them. All right, let's fire up our server. There's our good to go, and it's running on the port I want, so we're all good there. Now inside of Postman, let's do a post request, and we're going to hit the localhost http ://localhost 3030/API/register, like that. There is our route that we're hitting with our post request. And then inside of here, we have all these different things. These are the headers that we're going to be sending. And then let's do a body, and we want raw JSON, because that backend is expecting us to send it a JSON object. And do you remember what it looked like? It should have a first name, a last name, a username, and a password. So first name, Jim. Oh, and we are working in Postman. We need to wrap these in double quotes. Double quotes, last name, Wells. Now let's skip the other two and send this. And down here we'll see our response. Let's see. And there we can see our backend is in fact running correctly. Here is the object that we purposefully created. This is our standard response object that we're going to be getting from our backend, and it says, hey, success is false, error is true, you're missing a username, here is what you sent me. So this is why that is so valuable, to just pass back what was passed to it, because that allows us to quickly and easily see what it was. So let's go ahead and try let's add a username on here, but let's leave the password off. Let's just say Jim W. I want to have a really generic username. And now let's send it again. Hey, perfect. So our username is there, and now we're missing our password. So we can go ahead and add that as well. And we do need those double quotes, password. And I'm just going to make something. We're not doing any sort of fancy passwords on here. This is going to be super straightforward. So I'll just copy the username, Jim W. And let's give that a send. And there we have our successful registration. So now this user has been created and is stored inside of the database, inside of our MongoDB. And you can see these are the two pieces of information. It's actually the ID, the inserted ID, and acknowledged true. So that's a message from the database directly saying, hey, that was successful. So that's great. So we have one route down. Let's get moving and go create some more. So inside of login, we have already started that one, but let's make the necessary changes. So we're going to need to import some more things. Let's do var. We're going to need bcrypt in here. This is going to be require bcrypt, like that. And then we're going to need JWT. Again, make sure that when you installed this, or if you're using this, that you have version 9.0.0. You do not want to be allowing remote code execution on your server. Trust me. All right, and then const database connection, and there is our database connection file, /db connection. And one more import here from require, const.env equals require .env, and then you have to do a .env, whoops, .config, like that. Before we move any further, let's go ahead and create that env file. So inside of that source directory, just create new file and say .env, like that. And here we're going to create a secret. This is what's going to prevent cross-site request forgery. This is something that happens if you are not using any sort of secret like this. If you're just checking the JSON web token, the cookie that comes back, then someone could just hijack the cookie and send that to your backend, and you would think that they were in fact logged in when they're not. So if you add this in there, we can verify that, and then we won't have any problems. So for the secret, I'm just going to use UUID gen to generate a UUID. You can use whatever you'd like. Paste that in there. Now we have an environment variable that is secret and only available in the backend, and then to import that in our file, we have this package and then .env, and then we can access the value of that environment variable by saying process, just like you would see in the www file, the process and then the value that we had there. So you could put your port in this file as well if you wanted to. All right, let's get back to it. We have a lot to cover yet. Okay, the very first thing that we need to do inside of the login route, this is where we're going to be logging a user in. So find user, we need a helper function, of course, because we need to ping the database and look for that user. Collection and user, and it's a function, obviously. And then say const user equals await collection.find, and we're only looking for one, so we're not doing many. We want username to equal user. This is all we're going to pass. We're going to cut out the username and then pass it to the function. We're not going to pass the whole user. And then .toArray, like that. If you wanted to console.log it, you can, and then return user sub-0, like that. Inside of the actual route now, there's a few things that we need to do here. Well, there's a lot of things we need to do. Let's get rid of that extra space. We don't need this. You can have that if you want it, but we need to send this. We also need to send, let's just go ahead and copy access control allow, and what we want to do is allow credentials. This is one of those, so you have to deal with that origin twice. We also have to do the same thing for credentials. So the options handler inside of app.js is dealing with the pre-flight request, and then this route also needs to deal with the credentials as well. So that's what we're doing here. Okay, so let's go ahead and copy these two checks out from the register. We want to make sure, first things first, that the username and password has been sent. And if it has, then we're good. So let's do those 2 checks and send those back if there were no username or password. And let's get rid of this one to make sure that we don't forget. That will throw an error. Okay, now let's do a const search for, and this is where we're going to pull out request.body.username. Okay, so we checked to make sure that the username was there, so it's there. And then const found user equals await find user, and then we're passing in the database connection.collection this collection and the user we're searching for, like that. Now let's do an if not found user. Then what we're going to return here is, we're not going to do a generic server error. Let's be specific. Let's do a status, and the status would be 404 because we looked in the database and did not find that user. And then let's go ahead and send, let's copy this object out, send our standard object, except for we're going to say make sure success false, error true. Let's say user not found, user not found, and pass that request.body back for debugging purposes. And then the next thing that we're going to do, so if the user was found, let's go ahead and compare those credentials. We're going in the database, we're finding that user, and now we need to compare the hashed password from the database with the password being sent from the login screen. So what we're going to do here is say await decrypt.compare. And what are we comparing? We're comparing the request.body.password that was sent with the found user.password that we just pulled out of the database. Okay, and then we're wrapping this in an if. So go ahead and put parentheses around there and say if and if not. So add the not. If that comparison fails, then let's go ahead and copy this again, and the status would be 400, which means unauthorized. So success false, error true, and let's just say invalid credentials or unauthorized. Your cred's no good here, bro. Invalid credentials, like that. That works. And we'll pass the data back again. With all of that out of the way, then the next thing we need to do is, if the comparison was in fact valid, that means that the username and password matched. So then we need to create a token, and this is going to be jwt.sign. And what are we looking at? We're going to pull out the underscore ID. This is the it's a lengthy ID that Mongo generates, and so that's why I'm using that here. We're going to be using that as our token, and what's going to allow us to create a cookie that we can then compare again later. And then what this is going to equal is found user dot underscore ID. The cookie that we're setting, the token that we're setting, is going to have an object with an underscore ID equal to that of the found user, the ID from the database. And then we need to pass in that secret process.environment secret, like that, and then expires. Now, depending on how secure you want to get, you can set this super low. I'm just going to put 24 hours to make sure we don't have any issues with it expiring too quickly. And then what we need to do here is send that cookie cookie token. We're going to call it token, and then send the token. And then we need to set a couple of things here. HTTP only, true, and then max age. And what we're going to have is 24 times 60 times 60 times 1,000. And what this is, you have to put this in when you're sending it. So it's saying what like how long till this cookie expires, and it's in milliseconds. So you times that by 1,000 to get a second. There's 60 seconds in a minute, so times 60, and then 60 minutes in an hour, and then 24 hours. And then you can wrap these if you want to make it more clear as to what's going on. And then this one, and then the milliseconds. All right, just like that. And then here we have to do a response.send. You cannot do a response.json. It just simply will not send the cookie correctly if you do that. But we still want to send our standard JSON object, and this does in fact work. So what we're sending is success true, error false, and we're going to say login successful. Login successful. And then here we're not going to send any data back because there's nothing required. Like that. Go ahead and give that a save, and we already have this route uncommented in app.js. So let's go ahead and fire up our server, and then inside of Postman, let's see if we can log in. So create a new little tab here. It's going to be a post request. We can copy this and be /API/login. And body we're going to send would be raw JSON. And what we're expecting here is basically the same thing. So we can copy that, paste that in there, and then 3, 2, 1, send. And there we have our successful login. We took this account, we sent it to our login, it compared the hashed passwords, and those were in fact a match. So it created that token using the environment variable that we set from our environment file.env file, and then it sends us back the success. But if you notice right here, there's also this green one. We also sent successfully that cookie as well. So now we have a cookie. Now let's go ahead, and I told you guys this was going to take a long time. We need to set up, let's get rid of this index route. We're not going to use that. And what we need is a route for authenticating our users. So let's create a new route called user.js. And what we're going to do in here is, let's start by, let's copy anything really. Let's go ahead and copy the login. Paste that. Let's see, we'll need express, we'll need router. We're not going to need bcrypt in this one. We are going to need our JWT. We are going to need the rest of that. Okay, we do need one other additional thing in this file actually. This, I will point this out. I'm going to call this out because object ID. This actually stumped me for a little bit. The Mongo ID that I was telling you about, the underscore ID, it's a special thing, and in order to access it we have to get this special helper class from MongoDB. So that's why we're importing this as well. Alright, so let's rename this function called find user by ID, and here we're going to be passing in user ID. So let's make that a little bit more clear. And then what we're going to be looking for is the default underscore ID, so the Mongo ID, and then what we want it to equal, object ID user ID, like that. So this is helper class from Mongo is going to help us to make sure that that actually comes through the way that we want. And then inside of our route, we need to change, first of all, this isn't going to be a post request, it's going to be a GET request, because we're not going to be doing too much in here. All we're going to be doing is letting the credentials come in, comparing the cookie, and if it compares correctly, then they will be authenticated as the correct user. Okay, so we can get rid of, we're not going to do that check in this one, but what we do want to, so we can get rid of both of these. Let's check the cookie, const cookie equal request.cookies, and we're looking for bracket token. We're looking for the token cookie. That's what we named it. All right. So then what we're going to do is wrap this in a try. Claims. Now this jwt.verify, this is actually where the problem is in the JSON Web Token package. It's this function right here. So just an FYI. And we're going to pass that cookie and that process.env.secret. All right, and if not claims, then we're going to send a response.status 401. This is not authorized, and we're going to send success, false, error, true, message, no auth. So I think I was wrong on the other one. I think invalid credentials, I think is what it is actually. And then data, no. But if, in fact, it was, then const user equals await, find user by ID, database connection dot collection, claims dot underscore ID. So we're comparing that cookie using our environment variable, and if the one that was passed in fact matches this one, then we're going to find that user in the database, and then we'll in fact return that user. But we want to strip out the password. We do not want to be sending the password back. User minus password. So I'm just deconstructing that user like this so that we don't send the password back. So I'm going to create this new object that puts the password there and then spreads out the rest in this new object called user minus password. And then let's do a response.json and say, let's go ahead and copy this object. It's faster than typing it all out. Success, true, error, false, message. We can say authorized, please proceed. And the data we're sending back this time is going to be user minus password. And we're actually going to store that in a Svelte store. Sweet, right? Can't wait to do that part. It's going to be awesome. Catch any errors. And this would be like if the token is not sent correctly, because we're doing this check, so that if the token is sent in, we'll do the check. But if this fails outright, then we're going to catch that and do a response.send or response.status 500, and then .json, and then we can post that in there. Success, false, error, true, message, and then what this would be a JWT error. Just like that, and the rest of this was what we had copied from the other route, so we can delete that all. Give that a save. We do need to, I don't have nodemon running, so we need to shut that off and turn it back on. Let's go to Postman, create a new request. This will be a GET request. We should have the cookie still available. Just because we're opening a new tab, it should still be available in our browser. That's actually what cross-site request forgery is. If you have that cookie stored on your browser and you go to a fake website, that cookie is already there, then it steals the information out. We can copy the URL and this is going to be /API/user. So we do need, remember I commented these all out, we do need to uncomment this route. So uncomment there and uncomment here. Efforts to go fast. I also forgot to do to export the router there. So now we can go ahead and fire that up. Everything is good. And fire off our GET request there, and we in fact get authorized. Pretty sweet. Now we need one more function for our backend, and that is a logout route. So inside of routes, create logout.js. Copy all of this, including the export. Paste that. And then this is actually going to be super straightforward. Inside of here, all we actually need, we can get rid of all of these imports but express and router. We can get rid of this function. Doot, doot. This will be a post request. Let's change this to a post. And we're not doing anything really here, so we can get rid of async. We're not pinging any databases. We are needing to pass credentials. And all of this can go. What are we doing in our logout function? We are doing nothing but sending a new cookie that overwrites the previous one. So response.cookie, and we're calling that token, and then HTTP only. Whoops, that is not what I want. HTTP only. HTTP only. True. Max age 0. So it's going to expire immediately. This is how you clear cookies, and then we do a response.send. And anytime you're dealing with cookies, you can't use JSON, you have to use send or it won't go. Success, true, error, false, message, logout, successful. This is pretty much never going to fail because all you're doing is sending that response. So if you can't get any response from the server, your fetch will fail. This part will never fail. That's it. So we have our headers and our cookie and send, and that is done. Let's make sure that we don't forget this time to uncomment it out from our app.js. Whoops. Like that, and from here as well. Give that a save. There, it's good to go. Now let's create a new post, and this is going to be to HTTP localhost API/logout. Like that. We're not sending anything, we just hit go. Logout successful, and we did get that cookie, and it is expired. So there is all of our routes. Congratulations. I hope you guys have followed along so far. Let's go ahead and get this front end together. We can close this down, close this, close this, close all of that, and what we're going to open is inside of login. So inside of here, let's go to source, and we've already created the store where we're going to store this. We are going to change this up just a bit though. Inside of our home page, we're not going to import this component anymore. We're going to make that a page, its own page. We do want to import on mount so that we can check to make sure a user is logged in right when this thing is getting there. We're still going to keep this. We're going to get rid of this function, and what we're going to have instead is on mount, and this is going to be an async function. And what we're going to do here is const user logged in status is assigned an async function, and this is going to have const result await fetch http //localhost Now, I will point out in a couple of videos we used 127.0.0.1. If you do that, you cannot cross-origin set cookies. This will never work if you are trying to use your backend at 127, so just use localhost. It's the same spot. It shouldn't really matter. It's really frustrating that it does, because that was the other gotcha. I was scratching my head to try to figure out what I was doing wrong, and it was nothing other than using 127.0.0.1 instead of localhost, which again do the same things. Credentials include, and this means that we're going to exchange cookies, and then headers. We're going to be setting some headers here. Accept application/JSON, and content type of the same application/JSON, and we're going to return results. And then let's go ahead and const result assign await user logged in status. And this actually, I'm sorry, needs to go right here. Returned data. So await results.json like that. If returned data.success. So here we're checking that custom object that we've been using in the back. Now we have access to that here in the front, which is great, because we know what we're working with. Returned data.data. And this, so what we're doing here is we're pinging that backend. We're checking to see if the user is logged in. If they are, we're going to return that user and then put that in the store we've previously created. And then we're also going to make some changes here to this. And what we're going to do is, let's just delete this. We're going to make a div, and this is going to have a class equal to content underscore wrapper. Here's our h1 to consulting ninja. If is logged in, and we'll just close that right away. So if they're logged in, let's say thank you $user.firstname space $user. Sorry about the sirens. Thank you, first name, last name, for logging in. And then let's make an else. H2, you need to be logged in here. And let's copy that. And then just say, head to sign in page or register if you don't have an account. I'm just going to copy and paste some styles to make this faster for you guys. And then let's save that. Now the layout file, I also made some changes here. Let's import. So script import navbar, because we're going to be having pages, multiple pages, from /lib/navbar.svelte. We haven't created this yet. We're going to. This can all stay the same, except for we're going to add the navbar like this, and the styles will stay the same as well. So then let's go ahead and make that navbar. This part's going to be cool. New file, navbar.svelte, and what we're going to do here is script. We're going to import goto from $app/navigation. This is a built-in function from Svelte. I will link to the modules. That's where that is located. We're going to have a logout button in our navbar. Then we're going to use that to force some navigation. So let's import user. Here's our store, user.js. And then let's go ahead and make a reactive statement here. And we can actually copy this. It's just an easy check if the user is logged in. And then here, we're moving that logout function from the home page that we had to here, because we're going to make a cool little logout button. Await, fetch, p:/local host 3030 API/logout. This is going to get rid of that cookie. And it's going to be a method of post credentials include, and then we need to set some headers and accept application/JSON and content type of the same. Let's go ahead and copy that. And then here, user.update. So if they click the logout button, we're going to ping that backend, which we know for sure is going to eliminate our cookie. And then let's do a removal of the user store value back to null. And then we also want to await goto, send them back to the home page. And then a couple of options here, no scroll. We want that false. We want to re-scroll back to the top and replace state so that the UI is in alignment with where they're supposed to be. And why did I have it outside there? There we go. If the user clicks logout, we're going to ping the backend to eliminate the cookie and then remove the store as well. Now that I'm thinking about this, we probably could do an error if that fetch completely fails to not eliminate the store, because that would mean that the cookie would still be lingering around, but our store would not be set. However, I think if it was there, I'll have to check that part. If it is still there and you're automatically navigating back to home, the first thing that we're going to do there is send to the backend to find out if that cookie exists, and if it does, set the user. So I think actually in this instance it would be all right. All right, here nav_link href equals / this is going to be home. Now these other ones we're going to have a little conditional. If is logged in equals false. If they're not logged in, then we're going to have a few more. And that is going to be /login and /register. Login, register, like that. Let's do an else. So if they're not logged in, then we're going to show those items on the navbar. If they are logged in, then we are going to show this button, which, you guessed it, is going to have the logout button. Logout. Again, I'm going to I'm going to copy and paste some styles here. This is already going to be such a lengthy video. I hope you guys are sticking with me. This is pretty cool stuff. I hope you find it helpful as well. So there is our navbar. Now we also need to create 2 more routes. Let's go ahead and create a new folder called login. We're going to have a login page and a register page. And then new folder for register. Let's create the register page first. So plus page.svelte. We are using SvelteKit. Let's go ahead and create our script. We need to import goto from here as well. $app/navigation. And then we need to let username equal let password equal empty string. Let first name equal empty string. Let last name equal empty string. Let current error equal empty string. Let's make a register function. Const register equals sync. We're going to hit that backend. So fetch http //localhost 3030/API/register, and we need to send the method from here, which is post. Headers, here's where we need to set some more headers. Let's go ahead and copy. Let's go ahead and copy from here these 2. Save us a little bit of typing. What we really need is the body. This is going to be JSON dot stringify, and what we're stringifying is username, password. Well, let's do first name, I guess. Last name. And you don't have to do it this way. I'm doing this so it's more clear what's happening. Since these are equaling the same thing, you could just put the word by itself. And then this one, actually, instead of making this async, let's make this a dot then. So let's do a fetch and then dot then response. So you can do this however you'd like. So there's our JSON data. You can console.log it if you'd like, so you can see debug from the front what's going on. Let's do a little check. If data.error equals true, then let's throw a new error. Data.message, like that. If our backend responds, remember, that's not considered an error. We need to check to see if error is equal to true, and if it is, then let's throw a new error ourselves, and then let's catch it here in just a sec. But if there's not an error, then what we want to do is a dot then, and we need to make this an async because we're going to send them to the navigation page, or login page, I'm sorry. Go to /login, and then let's set those options. No scroll. We want to be scrolled back to the top and replace state as well, because we want browser history to be intact with where we currently are. And then dot catch. This would be that error. Either the server is down or the error that we just threw, and let's set current error to error. If you wanted to do a console.log, you could do that here. error registering, comma error, like that. So now we need our form. Let's get to it. Form on submit. Let's add in a modifier to prevent default. And what we're going to do here is register. Now, let's open that up a bit. Let's make a div. And what we're going to have here is a label for first name. And then say first name. And then an input of the same. ID equals first name. You can do a type on here. Text. But the most important part is let's bind the value to first name. That way we don't have to worry about it. And then let's make one for all of our form. First name, last name, username, password. So let's call this last name, and we can go ahead and copy and paste last name, last name. This will be last name, and then username, username, and then just copy and paste ID and value, and then this could be a type of password, and then for password, ID of password, value of password, and a label of password with a capital P. And then we need a submit button though. So underneath this one, let's make a button type equals submit, and say submit. And then let's make one more div down here and just do a small tag. And inside of here, let's do current error. And then basically all I'm styling here is the div, giving it a tiny bit of margin and color, and then this error if there is in fact an error. Alright, so we have a register page. Let's make a layout for it, and it's going to be a very simple layout. So new file inside of register, and this will be a plus layout.svelte. And all we're going to do in here is make another div like that. Here's where we'll have our slot. We're going to give this a class equal to content underscore wrapper. And then we're just going to, I'm just going to copy and paste these styles because I don't want to make you guys watch me type it. Just a very basic style. And then we can copy for a login page. Let's go ahead and create a new file called pluspage.svelte, and then let's just copy the register page, copy that and paste that in here, because the login page is going to pretty much be the same too. Difference is going to be, so up top we will not need the first name and last name fields. We also will not need those from the form. All we need is the username and password. So we can delete out. And then this would be login. This won't be register. Alright, so let's go ahead and set our login function here. We are going to use that navigation again. This will be API/login post. We do need credentials here. Credentials include, because this is where we're going to get that cookie back. And then first name and last name we don't need. And we can keep this if this is error, pass that down, and here we're going to be sending them to slash and say error logging in. Then let's fix our register there. It's slash login, not dot slash. And then we can copy and paste this layout. So copy, paste. Let's go ahead and see where we're at here. I think that about does for our front end. There's one other thing I forgot. Inside of API in the app.html, I'm going to add inside of head like that. If you followed along with the previous project, towards the very end, I hard-coded this backwards on purpose to show the different states for being logged in and not logged in. Now that we're actually having this hooked up, make sure that you changed that from the previous project when we did the starter version of this. It should be a reactive statement that says is logged in equals $user. If it's equal to null, then false, otherwise true. And make sure that that's the case in your navbar and your plus page.svelte homepage. And then this is what you should see. You should have your navigation bar with our three pages: login, register, and home. Every time that you navigate to home, you should see this GET request failing, and it's failing on purpose. It should fail because you are not in fact logged in. Let's go ahead and register a new user. Let's call this Bob Johnson, and let's use this B Johnson username, and then let's create a password, whatever password you want. I'm just going to do something simple, and then hit submit. Now it automatically moved us over to the login page, as it should. That's what we wanted to do. You'll see here our request successfully registered that user with the backend, inserted it into the database. We now can log in B Johnson with our username and password, and then once we hit submit, you can see that it pushes us to the home page again as we wanted. And then also you can see, so here's our successful login. It moves us to the home page, and then once it does that, remember our home page is set up to automatically send that GET request to the backend, passing along the cookie that we set. You can see it in application, cookies, and then here there is our token. That's what we named it. So there is our cookie, and inside of our network the login was successful. It moves us to our home page, which then takes that cookie that the login gave us, passes it to the backend that's using the JSON Web Token package along with the environment variable that we set to check, make sure that it matches up, and if it does, it returns goes to the database, finds the user, and returns the user minus the password. So you can see here, there is our response, just like we wanted. Success equal to true, error equal to false, authorized, please proceed, and then the most important part, where we're taking that user and stuffing it into the store. Now we have that user available across all of our pages to make use of. Here we have that message just saying, thank you, Bob Johnson, for logging in. Bob has been so helpful. Thank you, Bob. And now you can hit the logout button, and logout was successful. The cookie was in fact immediately expired, and so we are back to the home page. It reruns that request, and then this time the user fails because that cookie was expired. So if you wanted to log back in, you just go back to the login, type in B Johnson and the password, submit, and there we are back. Thank you, Bob Johnson, for logging in. Alright guys, so I know that this video was super long. I hope that you have found it helpful, though. I did get a few requests for this video. This is how we authenticate users using JSON Web Tokens. Please, 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 if you're using them, make sure your package is upgraded to the 9.0.0. Give me a thumbs up, shout out, pass this video around if you found it helpful. I hope that you guys have really enjoyed this. As always, have a great day.